Hello and welcome to episode 1 of How Would You Know I Was Lonely, the official Rhythm Method podcast. Now, we aren't entirely certain if you could even call it a podcast, really. What are the parameters of that definition? Who knows? We're also not sure what this is, what it's for, who it's for, and who will be taking part. Today, on episode 1, it will just be I, Mr. Joseph Bradbury, professionally known as Joey from the Rhythm Method. This week marks album release week, so this episode will generally be talking about that. So please do sit back and enjoy. So we have been considering doing this sort of thing for a little while now. We actually tried it a few months back, but it was actually quite sort of strange and really stilted because, well, just like the few times that we've been interviewed on the radio, as soon as that red light goes on, the on-air light, not that we had a light when me and Rowan did it, it's sort of the nerves kick in and your sort of natural ability to converse sort of goes out the window, which is, I don't know, for us I find quite strange because obviously if you've ever seen us live, we'll probably come across as a couple of people who don't really have any inhibitions or shame, and in a lot of ways we don't. But I don't know, I think without the sort of protection of being able to sing, perform, dance her out, and then just sort of only be left with, I don't know, our speaking voices, I suppose, it kind of makes it a little bit harder. So yeah, I don't know. I'm going to try it by myself for now, and I don't really know where I'm going to start, where I'm going to end. I'm going to sort of ramble on. I might edit out the ums and ahs, but then again, I might not. I might keep it more sort of naturalistic, the authentic product of our experience. Apologies in advance for the sound quality as well. It's I'm using these headphones with a built-in microphone. I do actually own a real microphone, which I bought when we first signed our our publishing deal. We got a bit of cash in those other days. And I bought a new laptop, I bought a MIDI keyboard, and I bought a microphone and these headphones. Since then, I've literally not even barely unboxed that microphone. So if anyone actually wants to buy a microphone, I've got one to sell. So this week on Friday, our album, How Would You Know I Was Lonely, comes out. It's the product of our lives, really, our lives for the last 5 years as a band, and also the years leading up to that point. I suppose the best way would be to sort of start from the beginning. In a lot of ways, this album is, it's my story in a lot of ways, which, I don't know, I kind of feel a level of guilt saying that in a way, because obviously we are a two-piece band, we are 50-50. That's how the profits, if there ever are any, will be split, But I suppose like the subject matter, the lyrics, they're mostly written by me. But I mean, obviously, once again, it makes me feel incredibly sort of shameful and guilty because I can't really play down what Rowan does in this band. Rowan does everything in this band. Rowan is fundamentally the mastermind. He's a musical genius. Regardless of whatever happens to me, he will be regarded as one of the best songwriters this country's ever produced. But now, sort of, having said that, let's get on to just talking about myself. So yeah, obviously going by the title, how would you know I was lonely? The main theme of this album is exactly that. It's loneliness, and I suppose in a lot of ways, loneliness and being alone has been a sort of defining aspect of my life personally. I'm the youngest of four brothers. I've got both my parents together and still with us, thankfully. My oldest brother is 10 years older than me. Then there's 2 years between each of those three older brothers. So they're 39, 37, and 35. But then I come along sort of 5 years later, and I don't know. I've always referred to myself as a miraculous mistake. I've never really asked my parents too much about why I came along so late, but I think it became a sort of strangely defining thing. Obviously, growing up, living in a sort of 3-bedroom house, so two brothers in each room, bunk beds, me and my brother, and the other two had two single beds. Yeah, and I kind of feel for my brothers because each of them never had the experience of having their own room until they left home. Which, obviously, as teenage boys, that's kind of, can get pretty hairy, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I was when I was about 12, 13, I think. That's when the last one of us left, went to university, and I was effectively an only child from then. It was that's when I suppose I kind of became much more. I'd say, I'd say comfortable in my own company, but I don't know if comfort was the overriding feeling, really. I'm going to sort of aim to make this this podcast a very sort of open and honest expression. I'm kind of almost using it as a form of therapy. And in that vein, I'm going to express to you right now that bizarrely I feel quite anxious as I record this. My palms are sweating. I feel that kind of light, fluttery kind of feeling in my sternum. And I suppose that's because I'm just sort of presenting myself, so to speak. Like sort of, I don't know, mental health on heat. Yeah, whatever. But yeah, okay, so I'm going to get on with it. So basically, yeah, so my family are a working class family. My mum would absolutely despise me for saying that, but it's the truth. So basically, when I was, I think, basically, yeah, my parents work. They still work. They're both in their 60s. My dad, I guess my dad is retired officially, but he still works on the side here and there, doing this and that. My mum's been a sort of a stalwart, a dedicated employee of the NHS for 30 odd years now. So yeah, but when I was growing up, do you hear that? Weirdly, a sort of little cameo from my mother there. I'll leave that in, just because I don't know, it seemed very appropriate for the timing of what I was talking about. So yeah, when I was growing up, basically my mum worked nights. My dad worked all around the country as a project manager, driving around to various different branches of Sainsbury's, different supermarkets, overseeing various works and stuff. But yeah, my mum worked nights in the hospital, at the reception, and then she'd sleep all day. So I wouldn't really see them very often. So I'd spend a lot of time alone. I'd spend a lot of time playing my GameCube, a lot of terrible games. The Minority Report game, which didn't have the rights to use Tom Cruise, so it used this sort of chunky blonde bloke who, I suppose, was an avatar of me in a way. Fucking hell. Um, yeah, this is gonna get it's gonna get weird, boys and girls. It's gonna get weird. Um, fuck knows. So anyway, yeah, I spent a lot of time alone, and which I suppose was a big, I don't know, a big change from my sort of primary school years. Because in primary school, I was very much a sort of little tearaway. I was a sort of Bart Simpson, Dennis the Menace. I had spiky hair. I was always getting in trouble. All that sort of stuff. I was very much the class clown and stuff. And obviously, I had my brothers living with us at the time as well. But when I went to secondary school, that was when I sort of all my brothers moved out, and I became a sort of small fish in a big sea. You know, it was. I may have been the class clown in my school when there was, don't know what, 150 kids there, whatever. But when there's 1,000 kids, everyone's been a class clown, and they're probably funnier than me, or at least more confident than me. So yeah, in secondary school, I kind of went into my shell. For the first sort of 4 months of year seven, I had this feigned an ankle injury, which I would go to try and get time off sick because I was so kind of just miserable. I didn't have any friends essentially. Up until the point when I started performing, I suppose would be the term. I started doing impressions, and there was one particular one which, to be honest, I'm two minds about talking about because it's in 2019. It's an instant cancellation. But in 2001, as an 11-year-old, it was my way of getting friends. So I adopted this character called Leroy, and he was a Caribbean bloke. And essentially, I would just walk around saying "yeah, man" and stuff like that. And I mean, obviously, yeah, it's not funny now. It's not big or clever. But as I said, I was 11 years old, and I was desperate for mates. And somehow that character became this thing. People come up to me and ask me to do it, and all of a sudden, I was getting friends. But it was a very I don't know, it was a very surface level friendship. Like I wouldn't hang out with them outside of school. I spent a lot of time outside of school. To be honest, I don't even remember really what I used to do as a kid. I never really had any hobbies. I think I did the bare minimum of schoolwork and stuff, like just to get my head down and get through. So I don't really sort of up until about 15, 16, I don't really have any memories of my teens. I don't know if that's normal or whatever. It probably is. Yeah, you forget. Obviously, the brain can only hold so much information. But yeah, it wasn't until I was like 15, 16 until I met my real mates, who I'm still friends with now, and effectively introduced me to Rowan. So yeah, it all began there. That's where our friendship thing became a thing. So, even with that like newfound group of mates, I was still, I've always felt like the perennial outsider, which I'm sure anyone that has kind of, I don't know, any kind of vague mental health issue knows that feeling very well. But with me, it was, I think in a lot of ways it was self-imposed. If you're familiar with the character of Salad Cream within our kind of extended universe, our musical universe, then you'd be aware of the technique that I would use as a sort of, I don't know, yeah, cry for help. I would lock myself away. I would pretend that, I don't know, I might be gone for good, you know. I suppose in a lot of ways that's kind of, not to get too dark about it, it's kind of what suicide is, isn't it? It's kind of, I suppose the downside of suicide and the regret that you get just before you die is that you're not going to see what happens after. You're not going to experience the sympathy that you're desperate for, I suppose, or the love, or whatever. Anyway, get off that for now. um, it's I don't know. When I was about 17, I broke up with my first girlfriend, who I was only with for about 9 months. But that kind of definitely pushed me off an edge, so to speak. And I sought solace in the big green arms of Lady Mary Jane, and that's when I sort of started smoking weed every day. And from there, a couple of years later, I discovered a gentleman named Codeine, and he became my best friend for many years. So yeah, that kind of the addiction thing became and it's sort of been a defining thing for the last decade of my life. Essentially, it's all encompassing. It definitely I don't know, when your main motivation every single day is how am I gonna get my hands on what I need or whatever, it can sort of really get you down. But whatever. So in 2012, when I was 22, 23, I was in a sort of a patch of one of my patches of unemployment. I think that was a sort of a 6 month stretch in the job centre, and yeah, I kind of obviously smoking weed every day, getting enough dull money to sustain that habit, and I was sort of wandering around Wandsworth. This is back when Wandsworth. This is before. So where I live in Wandsworth, southwest London, SW18. It's all like riverside flats now. It's just full of knobheads. Yeah, very unwelcoming to the real ones. You know, the OGs like myself. But back then, 2012, it was still very much a sort of industrial place. Like there's very few people essentially, so you could sort of wander around, smoke weed, and not get disturbed. And at the time, I was listening to an album by a man called Mac DeMarco under the title Two. And I'm not a massive fan of Mac DeMarco nowadays. Obviously, he's been cancelled to some extent. And also, he's got a lot to answer for with that like fucking guitar sound that so many people started using after him. But I'll stand by that album. That album is great. And so yeah, I was listening to that a lot. And that song "Ode to Viceroy" really sort of stuck out to me. And I was so sort of I don't know, bored by myself, insular, all that sort of stuff. I actually started to attempt to write a novelette of some sorts. Like I planned it all out in this kind of with like post-it notes on the wall and stuff. I looked up how you write a book, and that's apparently how you start. You sort of storyboard it with post-it notes on the wall, and you go step by step. So I started writing a book, which didn't last very long, obviously, because that kind of led me pretty fast into just writing lyrics. I suppose when I sat down to write in prose, poetry came out. You know, it's sort of when God has given you this gift, it sort of just bleeds out of you. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. So I was listening to Mike DeMarco, I was smoking weed, Ode to Viceroy. Then I started writing this thing using my mother's iPad, GarageBand, which I'm actually using to record this as we stand. So I'm still sticking with that, you know, the basics, you know, it is. From what I was saying, oh yeah, Ode to Viceroy. Yeah, so I started writing this thing, which eventually became Ode to Joey. So if you ever wondered why that's called that, it's probably because of Mac DeMarco, which I do feel ashamed to admit. But also, Ode to Joey, obviously, Ode to Joy is actually better, because it's actually more of a pun. So, big up myself. So yeah, that's when I wrote that lyric, how would you know I was lonely if I didn't tell everyone, which, as a lyricist, is... I still regard it as the best thing I ever wrote, and probably the best thing I ever will write. It sort of sums up everything for me, to be honest. It's it's a comment on like our generation, the social media millennial bullshit. You know, it's sort of, I have these feelings, but they're not legitimate unless everyone knows and everyone's going to be aware. And that doesn't mean like talking outright. It might just mean just being a bit weird on social media. Like I went through a phase of posting all my Facebook statuses in capital letters, which was, I don't know why I did that. I don't know, you know, bigger words, aren't they? So yeah, spent a lot of time by myself, smoking weed, writing songs. And that's when the rhythm method started. It's a bit of a blur now. I wrote about, I don't know, 21 songs in about 2 weeks, if you can call them songs. Some of them were alright, to be honest. I didn't mind them. There's some good melodies in there, and some fundamentally good lyrics, which a lot of them were used in other songs that appear on our album now. So yeah, it wasn't until, when was it? It was 2014. Wait a minute, I've got this all wrong. It wasn't 2012 when I was listening to Smoking Weed and Matt DeMarco. It was 2013. I do apologise. But then I moved in with Rowan in this sort of abandoned, well not abandoned, it was a very nice office block, which was a live-in guardian scheme. So essentially it was like, well, it's modern day slumlording. Essentially it's sort of a company buys a property to develop, and instead of risking getting squatters, they essentially just get squatters to come in and pay for the privilege, which is a great business idea, really, isn't it? But yeah, so we were living in this flat in SE1, just at the sort of foot of Tower Bridge, pretty mental. We didn't pay rent for the first 8 months, which is even better. And then me and Rowan, once again, this kind of, we had a shared loneliness when we were doing that. We kind of, neither of us got laid, essentially. We were essentially a couple for the time that we lived together. Spent a lot of time writing songs. It sort of it just happened. Yeah. So yeah. But back to the feeling of being the perennial outsider. So I left school in the first year of sixth form, just because I quickly realised that I actually didn't need to be there, so I left, without any aspirations or any plans or anything really, and that was my sort of first feeling of being disconnected from my closest friends, essentially, because they were still experiencing school whilst I was out on the streets on that hustle, you know, earning money. And they would go out on Friday nights, and I would go out with them, but I would have to leave early because I'd have to be up on a Saturday morning, or I wouldn't go out at all because I'd have to be up on a Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, starting at 8 o'clock, sweeping the floors and the hairdressers and that sort of stuff. Yeah, and then obviously my mates went to university, and I started going to these parties that they would invite me to, and I'd just be this bloke. Like, people would ask me what I study, and I'd sort of have to say I'm at the University of Life, you know. Which, looking back on it, I mean, I'm still at the University of Life. I'm sort of the Van Wilder of the University of Life. God knows. Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, felt like an outsider. I remember going to like cool London indie clubs, and just sort of standing outside in the smoking area and looking at my phone and just not knowing anybody and being too scared to introduce myself. And I mean, in that scene, the indie scene as it was known, or whatever it is known as now, because it's sort of, I don't know, it involved like London's most exclusive bubble in a lot of ways. It's sort of a lot of sort of famous people's kids and all that sort of stuff. And I felt completely detached from it, as sort of, as I said, coming from a fundamentally working class background. It's sort of, these people weren't for me, and I still feel that way, even though in a lot of ways now that I'm in a band and with a bit of I don't know, a profile, I suppose, in a way, a lot of the people now want to be my mate, and I knew that would happen in a way, and obviously I've just sort of gone for it because a lot of them are great anyway. But obviously you need in London particularly, I think you need a bit of you need your cred to sort of I don't know, qualify to be in with the in crowd. But yeah, I don't know if yeah, I certainly don't consider myself in with the in crowd though. You know, and I don't think I ever will. I remember when when the band first sort of started making movements, and we could go to like meetings and stuff in High Street Kensington, all the major labels and that sort of stuff. And then going for a meeting at the Groucho Club and stuff like that, I was definitely sort of romanced by that. And I was like, I could do this. And I read Alex James's autobiography on holiday once, and it was just like, I want that life. I want to live in Covent Garden. I want to do cocaine and drink champagne and go out with Sadie Frost. But I don't know. Obviously, I've snapped out of that now because it's not really that's not really a dream to aim for, is it? I think a lot. I don't know. I don't know what our sort of what my dreams are, or this band's collective dreams are to aim for, really. Because to be honest, I feel like we've actually already achieved them. We've actually we've already, I don't know, we are living our dream. You know, it's very hard to, well, it's very easy to neglect that and forget that in a lot of ways we're completely living our dream. We're in a band that people like, and it may be a complete sort of strain on our emotions and our finances and all that sort of stuff, but fundamentally it's fucking brilliant. And also, obviously, we have the legitimacy of the fact that my personal, like, pretty much two favourite songwriters this country's ever produced, Mike Skinner and Chris Difford, have both done stuff on our album, which I suppose, I don't know, I still can't get my head round. It's very, very strange. Um, and also, I don't know, that sort of stuff really made me realise that one's self-esteem shouldn't be dictated from outside influences, because, I don't know, it makes me sound, I don't know, ungrateful in a way. But the fact that my favourite songwriter, my favourite lyricist, Chris Difford, is singing on probably my favourite song on the album, don't know, it doesn't complete me, it doesn't fill the hole. And to be honest, that's probably a good thing, because, yeah, it's only really recently that I've realised that, I don't know, high self-esteem, happiness, contentment, whatever you want to call it, isn't something that you kind of one deserves. It's not something that you're entitled to in a way. It's and I suppose, because the fact is, as I said, spoken about it a lot anyway, with my addiction, that daily thing of chasing the feeling of just feeling all right is, I don't know, it's kind of skewed my outlook on life, because I've only realised recently that you're not meant to feel happy all the time. Like, that isn't actually how people feel. And I was under the impression that, like, I would look around and people were all right, and, like, I needed a substance to make me feel that way. But actually, it's not something that it's not something you should feel all the time, because obviously you don't appreciate it. And I suppose in a lot of ways I can compare that, I don't know, philosophy to addiction, because obviously with addiction, the more you take, the higher your tolerance gets, and the harder it becomes to get high. And I suppose if yeah, it's yeah, you're not meant to basically. The happy moments are meant to be not necessarily few and far between, but they're not meant to be constant, because you won't appreciate it otherwise, you know. And yeah, that for me, that's what I've learnt over the last few months. I think a lot with this sort of album release stuff. That one's contentment needs to come from within. You know, it needs to come from your own sort of self belief, as opposed to outside influences. Like obviously the album reviews are coming in now, and we're getting really good shit, and it's making me feel happy. But also, I'm very wary that that's dangerous, you know, because if I then become dependent on the opinions of people who write in magazines, what happens when their opinions change, you know, it's gonna hurt me. So I should adjust now, you know. Whoops. Just dropped a bottle of water. Need to pick that up actually. Quite thirsty. I've got a dry mouth. I've had a flu for the last few days. You see, feels like today could be the last day. Hopefully, it's one of those ones where because I don't work at the moment, obviously because I'm in a band. Being sick is that there's no bonus to it. Like I spend all day in bed anyway. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I'm not really sure if I've really revealed much, or revealed too much. I was actually going to do sort of, this is meant to be like a sort of track by track, sort of step by step sort of thing, but it hasn't really worked out like that, I don't think. It's been more a sort of just a feel for it. As I said, this is, I don't know how many people will listen to this, if any, but if you have, thank you. I'd just like to thank like Danny Elfman, because if you hear the little intro track at the beginning, that's actually the theme from Midnight Run. Obviously, I don't have the rights to that at all, and we have no intention of paying for it in any way. So we'll see how long we can get away with that. And yeah, thanks for listening. Our album's out on Friday. It's called How Would You Know I Was Lonely, and it's good. So please buy it. I've been Joey from the River Method, and this has also been How Would You Know I Was Lonely. So yeah, big up, one love, all that sort of stuff. My day you go. Ta-ra.